Hi, I'm Rachel Crow of Hello Cervix, and I just thought I'd do a little video, a kind of update since my cancer journey, and also just to reach out a little bit to all the people who've contacted me. I get so many messages and emails from people saying, my friend has this cancer, my friend has that cancer, my mother, my sister. Can I put them in touch with you? And in my kind of healing journey throughout my life, I've mentored many people with different diseases, and ultimately you have to want to ask for the help yourself. You know, we're all sisters, brothers, parents, and we all want to fix people, but it's really important that we are empowered to ask for that help ourselves, and asking for help is really hard. I know how hard it is to ask for help, but there's something humbling in being the one that asks for help and surrendering to that support. So that's the first thing is, I'm here for anyone who wants to receive support in what way I can offer it. I'm also a bit of a tough mentor because I think we have to be willing to go to any lengths to get well. There aren't softer, easier ways to face any disease, whether it's cancer, endometriosis, addiction, you could name them all. We have to be willing to really look at what's gone on. And I remember years ago sitting with someone witnessing a healing ceremony, and one of the practitioners said, "Why is your body creating this?" And that was one of the first things that I held, that kind of curiosity, that question. Why has my body created this? I love my body, and I can honestly say I loved my cancer well. We have to come from a place of joy and love. There's no point in torturing ourselves with drinking green sludge that tastes horrible or having therapies that we don't enjoy. My whole healing journey was, I see it now as a rite of passage. Absolutely, cancer can be a rite of passage. I had to completely stop and surrender. I've talked before in some of my blogs and videos that, the moment that the doctor said those words, "You have cancer," every cell in my body lined up and I knew that I could heal it. But I had to surrender, and I also had to face death, because there's a flip side. I kind of had to sit with that. Is that my ego? Can I really do this? And what if I don't? What if I can hold that question too? What if I can't do this? Am I willing to be a martyr and just let it take over my body? And every time that thought came up or those doubts came up, I would drop into, I am doing everything, absolutely everything I could possibly be doing to create wellness and health in my body. So for me, it did include diet, although I did keep thinking, I don't think this has got anything to do with diet. I've always ate really well. I've been vegetarian since I was 12. I've been sugar-free for about 6 years. Mostly eat a completely plant-based diet, no dairy. But I also think if my diet had been different, maybe the cancer would have spread. Maybe it would have been a worse diagnosis. I was lucky, I was stage 1B. Once you get to stage 2, then they want to start the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy. So what they were offering me was surgery, and lymph node removal, which, my lymph nodes are a pretty important part of my immune system. So I knew that wasn't the route I wanted to go down, but I also held that if I need to have surgery, if it gets to the point where this isn't working, I'll deal with that. But I had no fear, and I think fear gets you, and doctors can frighten us. we've handed our power over to doctors for too long. This is where I could go off on my rant about patriarchy and the witch burnings. And, we had 300 years of wise women, midwives, the herbalists, the women in our community who would be there for us when we needed them. These wise women, they were hunted down. This was the women's Holocaust. Women weren't allowed to go to university. We weren't allowed to study and become doctors. Men took over. They took over our bodies. They took over the medical establishment, and they took our knowledge away. So, I've been on a lifelong journey of healing, and it feels to me there's no coincidence that my mother put Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life's book in my hands when I was 18 years old. Louise Hay healed herself of cervical cancer. I also, from a teenager, I was reading healing books and books on magic and herbalism. So, this has been my life. So there was no question for me that I would go down any other route other than natural. But coming back to I knew what I was dealing with was something emotional, and that I had really spent a long time sitting with what's the core of this? Why has cancer come into my body? What do I need to do to heal it? And I really held those questions. And I believe that I got to the core of what it was for me, and it will be different for everybody. But I think there are certain energetics connected with different parts of the body. So, one of the amazing things about Louise Hay's book is you can look up your ailments and she gives you some affirmations. For me, I've done womb work for nearly 30 years. So the irony of getting cervical cancer, that hit me strong, really hit me. So, the energetics of the cervix it's our sacred portal. It's a boundary. It's the boundary into the womb. Was I holding my boundaries? Were people stepping all over my boundaries? Was I being clear? I can look back and say, hand on heart, no, I wasn't. Maybe I thought I was. I was also surrounded by people who didn't see boundaries. So that's another part of the journey, is actually to surround ourselves with people who are walking their talk, who are awake and conscious and can see the energetics and see what's the truth of things. I think as women, we often feel like we need to stay in unhealthy relationships or friendships to try and fix them. Sometimes the healthiest thing is to walk away. And that's what I had to do in my healing journey. There were certain people that I really needed to walk away from, certain people I really needed to hold a strong boundary, almost to the point, to the point where with one person I really had to shout and tell them to F off, basically, because they weren't hearing. They just kept coming at me. And it's like, actually, here, this is my boundary. You need to go away. So there are so many layers to healing, so many layers. And, I prayed for the right healing partners to come in my path, because you can't heal yourself completely on your own. You need mentors that are a little bit away ahead of you, leading the way. So I had a great team. In the end, I was working with my naturopath, who's fantastic, and I'm still working with her. A herbalist that, it was really interesting because the herbs we used were not all anti-cancer. It was about softening, opening, and relaxing my body. I worked with a sound healer. I worked with someone else who actually taught me to do sound healing myself, toning and making noises, which it was something that I really felt was important, because the cervix is connected to our throat. And if anyone who's done birth work, we talk about really loosening the jaw to soften into the pelvis and the hips. This is all connected. When we were fetuses and we were kind of curled over, our mouth and our genitals were attached and we kind of came apart. So, this bit is so related to the vagina, the vulva, the cervix, the womb, how we speak, how we stand in our power in the world. I read amazing books. I read really inspiring books. They're all on my resources page. I was in support groups, and I look at people who've healed or are on a healing journey, walking their talk. Women like Chris Carr, who've been living with cancer for over 15 years. Because that was the other thing that I knew. People could live with cancer, and I would rather live with cancer. Not long after my diagnosis, I read a story of a woman who had cervical cancer and had her womb removed, which is what they wanted to do with me, and then it spread to her vagina, and then she had her vagina removed. I don't know the rest of the story, but I know that I would just rather live with cancer than have those parts of my body chopped away. And it's one of the things Louise Hay says in her, she's got an amazing CD on healing cancer, and she just says, if you keep chopping bits of me away, there won't be any of me left. And that's often the journey for people with cancer. It's not everyone. Some people do, they go down the allopathic route and everything's fine. But for me, I really, really wanted to get to the core of why it had come to me. So I was able to use all the tools that I'd learnt in my life. I connect to my higher power. I connect to my spirit guides. I journey deep within, and I listen to the wisdom of my body. And I healed. And I healed. And I'm still healing. And I believe this journey for me has been a wake-up call. As women, we often put other people first, our children, our friends, our job. It was a real kind of, this is time for you to step up, put yourself first, drop everything else, focus on you. And what gift that was, and what gifts I now have to give to the world from healing cancer. Cancer no longer means death in our household. My children have no fear of cancer. They don't see it as a death sentence. They see it as a dis-ease that you can heal from, which is amazing. So feel free to browse my site, go to the resources page. There's loads of stuff on there. I've shared some meditations that I've used. I'd really love to support you in some way if you need it. But the first thing has to be, don't buy into the fear. Don't buy into the fear, because everything can be healed, and everything can be healed naturally. I completely believe that. But if the fear's got in, then maybe it's best to do as you're told. If you're the kind of person that hands your power over to doctors, or feels more secure and feels safe in the hands of a doctor, then maybe that's what is right for you. For me, I trusted myself, and I trusted the voices in my head. Now it sounds mad, but it was strong intuition that I knew I could do it, and a faith and a trust, and I surrendered, and I completely trusted that I was held, and I healed. And I'm here to share my story to anyone who wants to listen. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all my support team that continue to support me. and all my friends and family. And yeah, go well, big love, stay healthy.